The Frankie Files.
Would you like to do a podcast ad spot exchange? Hit me up at frankietees@substack.com. If you're a cult survivor, check out frankietees.creator-spring.com.
Trigger warning. Some people may find topics discussed in this episode difficult. Please proceed with caution.
Welcome, Files Podcast. Welcome to the world of cult kids. What an eye-opening season of Frankie Files I am having. Feedback has come in, and thank you for that. I hope that you are also having as many memories and realizations as I am. Doing this juggling act, I haven't budgeted a lot of time for correspondence, but maybe soon live call-ins again. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. Yet I'm starting to do more spotlights of real authors who are current in these times on these topics on Hot Takes of a Cult Kid. Check that out at frankietees.substack.com. And I'd like to expand that. Bookmark frankietees.com for ease of use in all things that I'm doing. Into today's topic. We're officially ending this section of the first quarter of our season 3 on the topic of author Cathy O'Brien's first book. As we wrap up the first book of MK Ultra Project Monarch survivor Cathy O'Brien's books, Transformation of America, The True Life Story of a Mind-Controlled Slave by Cathy O'Brien with Mark Phillips. Get your thoughts in order. We're heading to her second book now, which is, I'm so happy and ready to sink my teeth into this. In a recent interview, which I'm attempting to keep track of for the reporting on this entire season, in this interview, Cathy, coincidentally, it was on the Quite Frankly show. So he's in the Frank family. Anyway, and Frankie says, hola. Frankie files to the Quite Frankly show. But Cathy O'Brien says she wishes more people had read this book that we're approaching. Quick comment, I can help, Cathy. I'm not yet friends with Cathy O'Brien, but I am in full support of this work, and Cathy is findable on trans-formation.com, first of all. So if you don't already have that site bookmarked, what am I doing? Go there now. Bookmark it. I'll wait, so you don't have to pause this show. You've got to get all her books. I'll wait. Trans-formation.com. So you got to bookmark that. You back? Okay. So also you can join her membership in utter support of this totally repressed by algorithm author. I know I've searched her name. You could join her at locals.com. Just search Cathy O'Brien. Daily, weekly, see her thoughts and ideas, travels, and public interviews. And they're worth hearing because this was a high-level world politics operative, albeit involuntarily. Having this high-level clearance, Cathy O'Brien heard things we've all wondered about behind closed doors. You know, while these guys were naked and their dicks were in their hand. Ah, yes. And this first book is lined with absolute utter pigs, starting with Cathy's father. She got sold by him like a sack of potatoes. Then every priest, instructor, and handler later on. Whew. The corruption is so complete it's mind-bending. Still, and I feel like I could go back through and do another 3 months on Cathy O'Brien's first book, picking out these incredible details that they never thought she'd remember, too detailed to be fabricated. Yeah, I get it. That means they could be fabricated. I've been taking that into consideration always. But there's so much collaborative truth out there over her last 30 years. You're unable to discredit her. She's alive, and she's speaking her story. She mentions that Trance is a law book in libraries around the world, and the judge would not hear her testimony about the corrupt portion of the U.S. government that hurt her and other world leaders involved in the slavery of people, she created that first book as a testimony, and that was privately printed in 1995. Quick comment about the final chapters in the book Transformation. The last 100 pages of the book are incredible resources from reference books used to her timeline, to resources and how to help the cause, and other notes. It's got to be on your shelf if you're a student of cult, religion, mind control, manipulation, hypnosis, sexual slavery, or genetic interference, and the Nazi doctors. Now, as we enter the next book, I encourage you to read along all season. That's through October, November we go. We have 2 more books. If you're going to do PTSD, the workbook, little note, start on that now. What you write in memory during the process needs to sit for 21 days before talking about it to make sure the memory stays intact and is extracted properly. One of the things I'm completely in knowledge of now that was confirmed by Kathy O'Brien's process of writing it out, talking can damage or shape memory. If you're going to do the process of PTSD, try to get started on that now, and then we'll be discussing it at the end of the year, and I'd love to hear the feedback. Making sense of things all digitally will not work, she says. PTSD, war vets, sex abuse survivors, and psychological abuse survivors, activating the logic part of the brain requires pen and paper. Keeping the emotion out of it gives us a chance to have the memory intact. When a therapist asks you, how did that make you feel? It's actually shaping the memory, and it will not be a clean memory. If you're dealing with as much amnesia as I am, you're going to want to avoid that. After I wrote my book in 2021 with pen and paper, I typed it, but not until months later did I do interviews. I'm super lucky I did this because of the amount of NLP and missing time involved in my story, as well as covert drugging throughout my life and time in the cult and outside of the cult. I've been dosed. So it's a battle, and I'm winning with these new techniques. I've been wanting to remember these things for my whole life. Logging these memories feels so different than anything before. I'm accessing memory I never saw because it was quite simply masked as something else. Example, my memories are masked as a boyfriend, and now they look like a trafficker. And not for anyone else's prompting, this stuff flooded my brain as soon as I started reading the book PTSD Time to Heal by Kathy O'Brien. Pen in hand as instructed. Quite unique. So there's a lot going on here. And if you're keeping up, kudos. I'm not. In earnest, I was delayed in uploading the episode last week, and it was due to many hacking events on my machine. Frustrating stuff. So I'm busy putting safeguards in place to continue this work. I love it and will not stop. But I'm pissing off some traffickers, I think. The fact is that this is important stuff. These topics need talking about, and like so many adult children of cults, I want to participate in warning people about mind control. It's important to me. Those of us who've been mentally and physically enslaved using these tricks often feel the same, especially once walking away from the stupor of being distracted for another's benefit your entire life. It's hard to piece together. It's called trafficking, only they don't always use chains. Technology and tones, words and bones. So on we go. Welcome to the world of Cult Kids. Access denied for reasons of national security. The documented journey from CIA mind control slave to successful U.S. government whistleblower by Kathy O'Brien with Mark Phillips. Copyright 2004. Dedication in the intro. Access denied for reasons of national security. In loving memory and honor of Mark Phillips, 1943 to 2017. U.S. government whistleblower who dedicated and ultimately gave his life to empower humanity to peacefully reclaim their inherent right to free thought in light of truths he exposed. Mark and I share an epic and legendary love that lives on. Aww. I remain dedicated to our shared life's purpose to eradicate child abuse, human trafficking, and ultimately mind control, as well as to restore individual and national sovereignty in light of truth that makes us free. Quote, "It's not over till we win." The dedication goes on. To Mark, with infinite love and eternal gratitude for saving my life and giving me cause to live it, for valiantly lighting the path to freedom by living the love you are, and to whom I attribute my realization that love is the most powerful force in the universe, that peace and freedom are of the soul, that justice is absolute, and hope is why we're here. Kathy says, to Kelly, her daughter, whose positive attitude and brilliant nature lights the way for others to likewise trust in love and live peacefully true to soul, whose wise and compassionate spirit compounds the felony of being forced to struggle day to day without neurological rehabilitation or financial compensation, and who continues to be my inspiration of love's space that eternally binds us bigger than life, and to infinite others who support reality in light of love. The book opens. "Wake up, sleeping beauty," Mark said as he gently roused me with a cup of fresh coffee. "Welcome to a new day." Kathy says my eyes opened. Quote, "My God, did I die?" she wondered, sensing the love and peace surrounding her. Quote, "He quickly sold everything he owned, including his Back to the Future DeLorean, used in the rescue, retaining only basic necessities. The funds would be used to take Kelly and me away from this no longer private residence to the safety and serenity of Alaska." Jumping ahead, Senator Robert C. Byrd and other so-called leaders of our country involved in the project realized the problem Alex Houston's bumbling had created. Our danger intensified. Many government secrets and personal reputations were staked on the behalf that I would never be free to recall that which I was supposed to forget. They'd never stopped to consider the strength of the human spirit, the power of love, or what could happen when a man of integrity like Mark Phillips opened their Pandora's box of secrets. Now their paradigm was shifting and our danger intensified accordingly. She says, I could not yet think to trust Mark, though I sensed that I could. My capacity for conscious thought and reason had been stifled through decades of torturous abuse, whereby I could only do as I was told. His inside knowledge of C.I.A. inner workings due to his own past proved invaluable in keeping us step ahead of the most dangerous game, and continues to do so to this date. She wrote that in 2004. From the intro to Chapter 1. Regarding Mark, his inside knowledge of C.I.A. inner workings due to his own past proved invaluable. It's not what you remember that matters. It's how you remember it. Mark handed me several notepads and pen as he opened the door for me. The pen is mightier than the sword. Remember that. He settled into the driver's seat as the pacer he restored sprang instantly to life at the touch of a switch. We were on our way. She says, whether you wanted to forget it or not, your brain automatically compartmentalized memory so the rest of your mind could function normally as though nothing had happened. So some of the intro of the first book is recapped, adding info to it here in the opening of book 2. As the three, Mark, Mother Kathy, and daughter Kelly, travel by car with pets to a house in Alaska, they leave all behind in Tennessee. A huge drive. But Kathy has immediately a pen and paper put in her hand before she starts talking. This is super repeatable. I think I'm catching on here. Literally, we are encouraged to do the opposite in society. leaving us wide open to suggestion in a highly suggestible state. In other words, a lot of deprogrammers are reprogrammers. Those like Mark Phillips, trained in mind sciences and knowledgeable about the brain and trauma, hold all the keys. It's time for us to get that information out. That's the biggest nugget I'm focused on throughout the Kathy O'Brien story: mind control. That's the secret information every cult is selling: mind control. Let's not gloss over that. The USA government involvement in cults is confirmed by Mark Phillips, ex-CIA whistleblower, in the first book's intro. He was in it for decades, and he saw it, finding that it was being misused, not just deprogramming veterans and POWs, but programming porn slaves, kids, messengers. This man of integrity was aghast. The details of how the system of the USA government gets their escaped assets is ahead. How about how the psych industry helps someone brutally assaulted by audio harmonics? What are harmonics? Because we're going to be learning about what happened to Kelly and how they used harmonics to change her brain's neurons for the purpose of enslavement, I thought I would go back to a handy reference book that I've been using for Frankie Files since season 2. And I've had it in my possession for over a decade. This is Your Brain on Music, The Science of Human Obsession, Daniel J. Levitin. This particular section details what parts of the brain are involved in listening to music.
The Frankie Files.
Listening to music starts with subcortical, below the cortex, substructures, the cochlear nuclei, the brainstem, the cerebellum, and then moves up to the auditory cortices on both sides of the brain. Trying to follow along the music that you know, or at least music in a style you're familiar with, such as Baroque or blues, recruits additional regions of the brain, including the hippocampus, our memory center, and subsections of the frontal lobe, particularly a region called inferior frontal cortex, which is the lowest parts of the frontal lobe, i.e. closer to your chin than to the top of your head. Tapping along with music, either actually or just in your mind, involves the cerebellum's timing circuits. Performing music, regardless of what instrument you play or whether you sing or conduct, involves the frontal lobes, again, for the planning of your behavior, as well as the motor cortex in the posterior part of the frontal lobe, just underneath the top of your head, and the sensory cortex, which provides the tactile feedback that you have processed the right key on your instrument, or involves or moved the baton where you thought you did. Reading music involves the visual cortex in the back of your brain, the occipital lobe. Listening to or recalling lyrics invokes language centers, including Broca's and Wiriax area, as well as other language centers in the temporal and frontal lobes. At a deeper level, the emotions we experience in response to music involve structures deep in the primitive reptilian regions of the cerebral vermis and the amygdala, the heart of emotional processing in the cortex. The idea of regional specificity is evident in this summary, but a complementary principle applies as well, that of distribution of function. The brain is a massively parallel device with operations distributed widely throughout. There is no single language center, nor is there a single music center. Rather, there are regions that perform component operations and other regions that coordinate the bringing together of this information. Finally, we've discovered only recently that the brain has a capacity for reorganization that excels what we thought before. This ability is called neuroplasticity, and in some cases it suggests that regional specificity may be temporary, and the processing centers for important mental functions actually move to other regions after trauma or brain damage. It's difficult to appropriate the complexity of the brain because the numbers are so huge, they go well beyond our everyday experience. Unless you're a cosmetologist. The average brain consists of 100 billion neurons. Suppose each neuron was $1 and you stood on a street corner trying to give dollars away to people as they pass by as fast as you could hand them out. Let's say $1 per second. If you did this 24 hours a day, 365 days a year without stopping, and if you had started on the day that Jesus was born, you would by the present day only have gone through about 2/3 of your money. Okay, so he's talking about 100 billion neurons. Every neuron is connected to the other neuron, usually 1,000 to 10,000 others. Just 4 neurons can be connected in 63 ways or not at all, for a total of 64 possibilities. As the numbers of neurons increase, the number of possible connections grows exponentially. This is what's going on in the brain. So the idea of using harmonics, tones, to control the brain is not far-fetched when you read the level of involvement. Don't know if you know, but listening to music involves multiple parts of the brain, both hemispheres, left and right. So it is a unique activity to the brain. And I'm going to leave it at that this week for Frankie Files Podcast. Thanks for listening, and always keep critical thinking.
You're listening to The Frankie Files. FrankieFilesPodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Frankie Tees. As a writer and survivor of SA and CSA, I'm here to report on the story of Kathy O'Brien, one MKUltra victim. Her 3 books and her documentary will be the topic of Season 3 of Frankie Files Podcast. Find out more at FrankieFilesPodcast.com.